Warning: 5 signs you're a man-child or woman-child and don't even know it. Alright, let's dive into something that might hit a little too close to home for some of us. The title of this video is Warning: 5 signs you're a man-child or woman-child, and don't even know it. Now, I know what you're thinking. What? Me? A man-child? No way, but before you click away, stick around. This isn't about shaming anyone, it's about self-awareness, growth, and ultimately, how to break free from the patterns that hold us back from becoming the person we could be. Spoiler alert, this is going to get deep. We live in a world where adulthood is more complicated than ever. The lines between being a responsible adult and clinging to youthful irresponsibility are blurred. And that's partly because the modern world offers us so many distractions, so many ways to avoid facing real challenges. Nietzsche would have had a field day analyzing this. He was all about the idea of self-overcoming, constantly pushing oneself to grow, to evolve, to face the struggles of life head-on. But what happens when we avoid that struggle? When we cling to comfort, to escapism, to irresponsibility. That's when we start inching closer to becoming what we're calling a man-child or woman-child. Let's break it down logically. A man-child or woman-child isn't just someone who plays video games or watches cartoons. That's too simplistic. We're talking about a deeper issue here: emotional stagnation. It's about avoiding the responsibilities and challenges that come with growth. And the scary part is, you might not even know you're doing it. So what are the signs? Let's talk about the first one. Sign 1: you avoid responsibility like it's a plague. Think about it. When was the last time you willingly took on a challenge that scared you? I'm not just talking about work tasks or paying bills on time. I'm talking about responsibilities that force you to grow, making tough decisions, committing to long-term goals, or stepping up for the people around you. Nietzsche believed that growth comes through struggle. It's through facing challenges that we become something more than we were before. But if you constantly avoid responsibility, what does that say about you? Are you stagnating? Are you afraid of what taking on responsibility might reveal about your own potential?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Next time you're given an opportunity to take on more responsibility, ask yourself, am I avoiding this because I'm afraid of failing, or because I'm too comfortable where I am? Nietzsche would argue that comfort is the enemy of growth. The man-child or woman-child chooses comfort over growth every time. Don't let that be you. Sign 2: you prioritize pleasure over purpose. Here's a big one. It's so easy today to get lost in seeking pleasure, whether it's binge-watching Netflix, scrolling on social media, or chasing superficial experiences. But Nietzsche warned us about this. He argued that a life driven by pleasure alone is ultimately hollow. It's a life that avoids the deeper, more meaningful challenges that bring true fulfillment. Ask yourself, are you living for the next thrill, or are you living for something deeper? The man-child or woman-child is trapped in a cycle of pleasure-seeking. They avoid discomfort, and by doing so, they avoid purpose. Nietzsche believed that purpose is found in overcoming hardship, in striving toward difficult goals. When you're living just for pleasure, you're not really living, you're avoiding. You're distracting yourself from the real work of life, which is about meaning, growth, and creation. Sign 3: you blame others for your problems. This one's tough, but it's crucial. When things go wrong in your life, do you find yourself blaming external factors? Maybe it's your boss, your partner, or even the system. Nietzsche had a lot to say about this. He believed in the idea of amor fati, or the love of fate. That means accepting everything that happens to you, good or bad, and turning it into something you can grow from. Blaming others is a sign of immaturity. It's an unwillingness to take ownership of your life. The man-child or woman-child is always looking for someone else to blame. But Nietzsche would argue that real maturity comes from taking responsibility for everything in your life, even the things that seem out of your control. Why? Because it's through that responsibility that you find power to change, power to grow, and power to shape your future. Here's a question for you: the last time something went wrong, did you immediately look for someone to blame, or did you ask yourself what you could learn from it? That's the difference between growth and stagnation, between becoming an adult and staying a child. Sign 4: you fear commitment. Whether it's committing to a relationship, a career, or even a long-term project, the fear of commitment is a huge red flag. Nietzsche believed that life is about creating yourself, your values, your future. But creation requires commitment. It requires sticking with something even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. The man-child or woman-child avoids commitment because they're afraid of the responsibility it brings. They fear that committing to something will limit their freedom. But here's the paradox: true freedom comes through commitment. It's only by dedicating yourself to something meaningful that you can transcend the superficial distractions of life. Nietzsche would argue that when you fear commitment, you're really fearing your own potential. You're afraid of what you might become if you fully invested yourself in something. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding committing to right now? And why? If the answer is rooted in fear, it's time to confront that. Growth requires commitment, even when it's uncomfortable. Sign 5: you live in a state of perpetual escapism. Whether it's video games, social media, or constant entertainment, if you find yourself always escaping from reality, that's a sign you're not engaging with life in a meaningful way. Nietzsche would call this a form of self-deception. You're distracting yourself from the deeper questions, the harder challenges, and the real work of becoming who you're meant to be. Living in escapism is the ultimate sign of a man-child or woman-child. It's a refusal to face life as it is. But Nietzsche believed that life is to be confronted. Even in its pain, even in its difficulty, life is where meaning is found. Escapism robs you of that meaning. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of superficiality, avoiding the very things that could help you grow. Here's a tough question: how many hours a day do you spend escaping from reality instead of engaging with it? Are you using those hours to avoid the discomfort of growth or facing your own limitations? Or are you using them to become something more? The path to growth: confronting your inner child and taking control of your life. All right, so now that we've uncovered these 5 signs, it's time to talk about what you can actually do with this awareness. Recognizing that you might be stuck in a man-child or woman-child mentality is only the first step. The real question is, how do you break free from it? How do you move from a state of avoidance, of choosing comfort and escapism, to a state of growth, purpose, and responsibility? Let's start with the most important point: you have to confront your inner child. And by that, I don't mean the playful, imaginative part of you. We're not trying to kill joy or creativity. I'm talking about the part of you that's stuck in immaturity, the part that's afraid to face the challenges of adulthood. Nietzsche believed that self-overcoming is the highest form of human development. He talked about the need to constantly recreate yourself, to evolve, to face the parts of yourself that are weak, fearful, or stagnant, and to turn them into strengths. Step 1 is simple, but not easy: stop avoiding responsibility. The next time life presents you with a challenge, whether it's at work, in your relationships, or with your personal goals, don't run from it. Don't look for the easy way out. Instead, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? Nietzsche believed that struggle is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It's only through struggle that we grow, that we become more than what we are. The man-child avoids struggle, the adult seeks it out, knowing that only through discomfort can they evolve. Look at your life right now. Are there responsibilities you've been avoiding? Maybe it's having a tough conversation with someone close to you. Maybe it's taking that next step in your career, even though it scares you. Or maybe it's something as simple as committing to a daily discipline, whether it's exercise, learning a new skill, or managing your finances. Whatever it is, stop avoiding it. Confront it head on. The second step is to stop prioritizing short-term pleasure over long-term purpose. This one is tough because we live in a world that constantly bombards us with distractions. We're a society addicted to pleasure dopamine hits from social media, endless entertainment, fast food, you name it. But Nietzsche believed that a life driven by pleasure is ultimately empty. He said, "He who has a reason to live can bear almost anyhow." In other words, if you have a purpose, you can endure the discomfort, the struggle, the hard work needed to achieve that purpose. So, start identifying your why. What is your purpose? What do you want to build in your life that's meaningful, that's worth enduring the hard stuff for? Once you have that, you'll start to see short-term pleasures for what they really are: distractions. They're not inherently bad, but when they become your main focus, they keep you stuck in a cycle of avoidance. Purpose is what pulls you out of that cycle. Now, let's talk about blame. We've all done it, and it's a classic sign of immaturity. When things go wrong, it's easy to point fingers at the people or circumstances around us. But here's the thing: blaming others is a way of giving up your power. Nietzsche believed in what he called amor fati, the love of fate. This means accepting everything that happens to you, good and bad, as an opportunity for growth. It's about taking responsibility for your life, even when things don't go your way. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And that's where your power lies. The next time something goes wrong, resist the urge to blame others. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do to take ownership of this situation? What can I learn from this? That shift in mindset from blame to responsibility is the key to moving out of the man-child mentality and into true maturity. Finally, confront your fear of commitment. This is huge. Whether it's fear of committing to a relationship, a career path, or even a personal development goal, that fear is what keeps you stuck. Nietzsche believed that freedom comes through commitment, not the avoidance of it. When you commit to something meaningful, you give yourself the structure and focus needed to grow. Without commitment, your life just drifts. And that's where the man-child or woman-child thrives, in the space of non-commitment and avoidance. So, ask yourself, what am I avoiding committing to? And why? If it's fear, recognize that growth comes from facing that fear, not running from it. The power of self-overcoming: how to break free from stagnation and embrace growth. Now that we've explored the roots of the man-child or woman-child mentality, it's time to talk about one of Nietzsche's most powerful concepts: self-overcoming. This idea is the antidote to stagnation, the key to breaking free from the patterns that keep you stuck in immaturity and avoidance. Nietzsche believed that the highest form of human existence wasn't about comfort or even happiness. It was about constant growth, about pushing yourself beyond your limits to become something greater. So, what does self-overcoming really mean? It's the process of confronting your weaknesses, your fears, and your comfort zones, and actively choosing to become stronger. It's about recognizing that the version of yourself you are today isn't the final form, it's just one step in a much larger journey. The man-child or woman-child avoids this process. They cling to who they are, afraid of the discomfort that comes with change. But self-overcoming requires you to face that discomfort and embrace it as part of the path to becoming the person you're meant to be. One of the biggest barriers to self-overcoming is fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control. But here's the thing: Nietzsche believed that true growth only happens when you confront your fears. He said that what does not kill me makes me stronger, and while this quote has been overused in popular culture, its meaning is profound. Every time you face a challenge, whether it's a difficult conversation, a new responsibility, or a personal goal that feels out of reach, you have the opportunity to grow. But growth only happens when you push through the fear and discomfort instead of avoiding it. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? Is it a failure? Embarrassment? The possibility that you might not be good enough? Whatever it is, recognize that avoiding those fears keeps you stuck. Self-overcoming is about facing them head-on and using them as fuel for growth. You don't become stronger by avoiding challenges, you become stronger by confronting them, learning from them, and ultimately overcoming them. Another crucial part of self-overcoming is taking ownership of your life. We've talked about how blame is a form of avoidance, a way to externalize responsibility. But when you take ownership of everything, your successes, your failures, your growth, you reclaim your power. Nietzsche believed that individuals who embrace their fate, who take full responsibility for their lives, are the ones who truly thrive. This is the opposite of the man-child or woman-child, who always looks for someone else to take the blame or make decisions for them. So, ask yourself, am I ready to take full ownership of my life? That's where self-overcoming begins, when you stop waiting for someone else to change your circumstances and start taking action to change them yourself. Embracing discomfort, the path to becoming who you're meant to be. Now that we've laid the groundwork for self-overcoming and taking ownership of your life, it's time to talk about something most of us try to avoid at all costs: discomfort. Here's the truth: discomfort is not the enemy. In fact, it's a necessary part of growth. Nietzsche understood that life isn't about avoiding hardship or suffering, but about finding meaning through it. He believed that true strength, true freedom, comes from embracing discomfort, not running from it. Think about it: every significant achievement in your life, whether it's personal growth, career success, or meaningful relationships, has required you to step outside your comfort zone. If you want to become the person you're meant to be, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. The man-child or woman-child seeks constant comfort, endless pleasure, and avoids anything that feels like a challenge. But that's not where transformation happens. Let's get practical for a moment. The next time you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, whether it's a difficult conversation, a new responsibility, or a moment of vulnerability, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this discomfort make me stronger? Instead of running from it, lean into it. It's in those moments of discomfort that you'll find your greatest opportunities for growth. Nietzsche had a term for this process: becoming. He believed that life is not about achieving some final, static state of perfection. Instead, it's about constantly evolving, constantly becoming better, stronger, and more resilient. But becoming requires you to face discomfort head-on. The person who avoids discomfort remains stagnant, trapped in a cycle of immaturity and avoidance. The person who embraces it, however, opens themselves up to a life of deep meaning and fulfillment. So, here's the final question I'll leave you with. Are you willing to embrace the discomfort that comes with growth? It's not easy. It requires you to let go of the need for constant pleasure, to stop avoiding responsibility, and to confront your fears. But it's the only way to truly become the person you're capable of being. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're taking a step toward that higher version of yourself. In the end, it's not about avoiding the signs of being a man-child or woman-child. It's about recognizing them, confronting them, and choosing to evolve. It's about committing to a life of purpose, responsibility, and self-overcoming. And that journey, as uncomfortable as it may be, is the path to becoming who you're truly meant to be.